Xanth's head exploded, grey matter splattering the wall behind him. The sharp report of the pistol echoed through the stunned chamber. Kyle Ross lowered his gun, the barrel still smoking. Earth's ambassador holstered his weapon. "Anyone else think humans are weak?" The Akamarian council members shook their heads, compound eyes wide with shock. Kyle was humanity's last hope against the aggressive Akamarian Empire. These tense negotiations would determine Earth's fate. Kyle had spent weeks bargaining with the towering insectoid Xanth. The Akamarians coveted Earth's resources and advanced technology. But Xanth's demands were outrageous, total surrender of human autonomy. When Kyle refused, Xanth flew into a rage, threatening humanity's destruction. In that moment, Kyle knew diplomacy had failed. Xanth would never see humans as equals. To him, they were just weak prey to be crushed. But Kyle would show the Akamarians the true strength of the human spirit. "Prepare your fleets," Kyle declared to the quivering council. "Humanity is coming, and we won't stop until your unconditional surrender. You've sown the wind, now reap the whirlwind." He tossed his Earth flag pin on Xanth's corpse and strode out, the doors slamming behind him. The die was cast. All-out war with the mighty Akamarian Empire was humanity's only path now. Kyle could only pray that human courage and ingenuity would be enough to overcome the aliens' vast technological advantage. The fate of his species hung in the balance. The news of Kyle Ross shooting Xanth square in the head traveled to the Akamarian homeworld at the speed of light, igniting an inferno of rage and calls for vengeance. The Akamarian High Council held an emergency session, voting unanimously to declare total war on Earth and vowing to avenge their murdered leader. Warlord Zarkoth, Xanth's successor, pounded his claw on the council podium. "The humans will pay for this insult with their lives. We will bomb their pathetic planet into rubble and enslave any who survive." The Akamarians assembled a colossal armada, thousands of warships strong. The ships bristled with devastating weaponry, plasma cannons, singularity missiles, and legions of Akamarian troops. Zarkoth put out the call, and Akamar's allies answered. The Zephyrians and Krill, eager to share in the spoils of a conquered Earth, pledged hundreds of ships and soldiers to the cause. Together, this mighty allied fleet set out for the solar system, ready to unleash an unstoppable storm of destruction. But as the armada traversed the void between stars, dozens of ships suddenly detonated in blinding flashes, killing thousands in an instant. Zarkoth howled with fury as his subordinates investigated and discovered the horrifying truth. The ships had been sabotaged weeks earlier by human infiltrators, armed with powerful antimatter charges. The warlord's compound eyes widened as he realized the extent of human cunning and ruthlessness. This Kyle Ross was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. As the battered Akamarian fleet finally reached Earth, they were met with an alarming sight. A phalanx of human defense platforms hung in orbit, aiming the muzzles of railguns, laser batteries, and nuclear missiles directly at the approaching ships. Swarms of human fighter craft poured from hangars, racing to meet the alien vessels head-on. On the planet below, armies of human soldiers, millions strong, mobilized, encased in sleek power armor and hefting deadly Gauss rifles. Portable energy shields hummed to life around their formations. Aboard his flagship, Zarkoth raged at the tactical display, his mandibles clacking furiously. The humans, whom they had dismissed as weak and primitive, now stood well prepared to face the Akamarians in battle. The warlord suddenly understood. Earth's passivity had been a facade all along, a ruse to lure the Akamarians into a war they were ill-prepared for. The first blows landed as human railgun slugs ripped into the hulls of Akamarian ships, tearing through thick armor like tissue paper. Missiles streaked from Earth's platforms, leaving trails of white smoke as they homed in on the enemy fleet. The war for Earth had begun. Glowing railgun slugs from the human orbital platforms tore through the hulls of the Akamarian dreadnoughts, detonating their reactors in brilliant flashes of light. Hundreds of alien strike craft went up in flames as they were caught in withering crossfires of human laser batteries and missile salvos. But even as the initial human surprise attack took a heavy toll, the sheer numbers of the vast Akamarian armada began to tell. The aliens poured unrelenting plasma fire into the human defense line, melting orbital gun platforms into hurtling wrecks that burned up in the atmosphere. Akamarian soldiers in hulking exoskeletons leapt from speeding landing pods as they pierced the orbital debris field, smashing into the streets and parks of Earth's cities. Unable to intercept every incoming enemy pod, human forces on the ground braced themselves for brutal close-quarters combat. In the ruined avenues of New York, Kyle Ross led his power-armored troops against the invading Akamarian shock troops. A storm of hypersonic flechettes from human Gauss rifles met the searing plasma bolts of the aliens, soldiers on both sides falling in the lethal exchange. An Akamarian warrior raised its plasma rifle at a fallen human, but Kyle was faster. He charged across the rubble and leapt, his armored fist crunching into the alien's head, the exoskeleton crumpling like tin foil under the force of the blow. A group of towering four-legged Akamarian battle mechs lumbered down the street, leveling entire buildings with searing beams from their mounted plasma cannons. In response, a pair of sleek human Hellfire mechs emerged from behind the skyscrapers. The 30-foot-tall machines opened up with their arm-mounted railguns, the hypervelocity rounds smashing into the Akamarian mechs and shredding their armor. The alien walkers toppled over, belching smoke and flames. In orbit, human reinforcements from the Martian shipyards flew into battle, their Orion drives flaring. The boxy human warships unleashed salvos of nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers and Kasaba howitzer shells into the flanks of the Akamarian fleet, the armor-piercing munitions gutting the alien vessels. But Warlord Zarkoth had one last card to play. On his command, hundreds of fresh Zephyrian and Krill warships emerged from their hiding places behind the moon, catching the human forces in a brutal crossfire. Fiery explosions lit up the orbitals as human ships succumbed to the renewed alien onslaught. But the Akamarians revealed they had saved their most terrifying weapons for this final confrontation. From the vast launch bays of their remaining dreadnoughts emerged a dozen massive asteroids, each the size of a mountain. Equipped with powerful engines and armed with city-leveling antimatter warheads, the projectiles rumbled towards the battered Earth, ready to reduce the human homeworld to a lifeless cinder. As the asteroid weapons rumbled closer, Kyle Ross gritted his teeth, watching the tactical display with a hawk's focus. The hulking mountains of rock and metal loomed larger by the second, ready to crack the Earth like an egg. Sweat beaded on his brow. If this gambit failed, it was all over. Deep beneath the Himalayas, Andes, Rockies, and other mountain ranges, powerful seismic rumbles shook the Earth. With a thunderous roar, hundreds of concealed silos burst open, and a swarm of missiles streaked into the sky, riding pillars of smoke and flame. The 500-gigaton thermonuclear warheads shot into space, homing in on the asteroids like angry hornets. The missiles slammed into the asteroids and detonated in a blinding flash, a second sun blazing in the void. Actinic plasma, searing X-rays, and a titanic shockwave scoured the asteroids, vaporizing the smaller ones in an eye blink. The larger asteroids shattered into fragments, the once world-ending projectiles reduced to drifting, harmless pebbles. "Yes!" Kyle pumped his armored fist as a ragged cheer went up from the human forces. They'd done it. Earth was saved, but the celebration was short-lived. On the bridge of his flagship, Zarkoth pounded his claw on the command console, nearly cracking it in half. Compound eyes blazing, mandibles quivering with rage, he snarled new orders. "All ships converge on the Earth. Bombard their cities until nothing is left but glass. Raise that wretched planet to the ground." The Akamarian fleet wheeled about, charging weapons, ready to unleash an apocalyptic barrage. But before they could fire, new contacts appeared on the sensors. A fleet of midnight black human ships seemed to materialize out of nowhere behind the alien armada, as if they'd stepped out of a tear in reality itself. The human stealth ships opened up with a storm of exotic weapons. Beams of blinding gamma rays sliced into the alien vessels, bypassing their shields as if they didn't exist. Antimatter cannons lobbed winking pinpricks of oblivion into the enemy fleet, the unstable particles annihilating into bursts of pure energy on impact. And then came the singularity torpedoes. Swirling vortexes of darkness streaked from the human ships, pulling Akamarian and allied vessels into their black maws. The doomed alien ships stretched and spaghettified as they vanished into the ravenous quantum singularities, crushed into oblivion at the heart of newborn black holes. Zarkoth's eyes widened in disbelief as he watched a full third of his fleet get swallowed by the impossible human weapons. How did the humans wield such power? Where had these ships come from? In dawning horror, he realized the truth. Humanity had played the ultimate ruse. Earth's true strength had been hidden all along, waiting for the Akamarians to overcommit. On the blood-soaked streets of Earth's ravaged cities, Kyle Ross and the human forces surged forward with a triumphant roar as word of their Ghost Fleet's attack spread. Power-armored soldiers sprinted from cover to cover, Gauss rifles cracking as they cut down Akamarian warriors. Hellfire mechs thundered down the rubble-choked avenues, heavy metal feet pulverizing alien bodies. The humans pushed the invaders back relentlessly, liberating city blocks in a storm of Gauss flechettes and laser beams. Gunfire and plasma blasts crackled around Sergeant Tanner and his Spec Ops team as they slipped unseen through the shadows. Their active camouflage suits shimmered, blending them almost perfectly with the blasted urban landscape. The stealth troopers vaulted over craters and corpses, making their way to the Akamarian landing craft, squatting in the ruins of Central Park. With hand signals, Tanner directed his team into position. As one, they primed plasma grenades and tossed them into the alien troop bays. The landing ships belched gouts of boiling plasma as the explosives detonated, cooking off ammunition and fuel. Akamarian soldiers stumbled out shrieking, only to be cut down by invisible human flechette fire. Leaping aboard the last functional lander, Tanner decloaked in the cockpit, jamming his Gauss pistol to the pilot's head. "All right, Akamarian, time for a little joyride," he growled. The alien vessel lurched into the sky, spinning to target the other landers. The humans had just turned the aliens' own ships against them. On the bridge of the Akamarian flagship, Zarkoth smashed his claw on the weapons console. Sparks flew and metal crumpled under the blow. The warlord watched in disbelief as the human stealth ships shredded his fleet, his soldiers dying by the thousands. "All ships full speed ahead. Ram the humans, take those hairless apes with us to oblivion," he roared. The remnants of the Akamarian armada surged forward, their hulls crumpling and venting atmosphere as they collided with the human vessels in titanic impacts. The void lit up with blinding explosions as ships from both sides erupted into blossoms of flame and molten debris. In the chaos, a human boarding torpedo punched through the hull of Zarkoth's ship. The metal tube skidded to a halt, and its hatch blasted open, disgorging Kyle Ross and an assault team in hulking power armor. Pulse rifles barking, they stormed through the alien ship, cutting down Akamarian crewmen. "Push forward to the bridge," Kyle shouted over the din of combat. "We're ending this now." They blasted through bulkheads and airlocks, leaving a trail of Akamarian corpses in their wake. Finally, they reached the bridge doors. Kyle kicked them down and charged in, rifle leveled. There stood Zarkoth, a tower of chitin and razor-edged claws. The warlord bellowed a challenge and lunged, slashing. Kyle ducked and rolled, but Zarkoth was shockingly fast for his size. A swipe from his claw tore a gash in Kyle's armor, drawing blood. The other humans opened fire, Gauss rounds pinging off Zarkoth's exoskeleton. Snarling, the warlord backhanded a soldier, sending him crashing into a bulkhead with a sickening crunch. Kyle leapt to his feet and charged, ramming his rifle stock into Zarkoth's face. The alien's compound eyes cracked, but he barely flinched. His claw shot out, seizing Kyle by the throat. "Pathetic human," Zarkoth hissed, mandibles dripping saliva. "Did you really think you could defeat me? I have slain thousands of your kind." He squeezed and Kyle choked, spots dancing in his vision. Desperately, he jammed his rifle barrel under Zarkoth's chin and pulled the trigger. The alien's head snapped back, and Kyle felt a hot spray of ichor across his face. Zarkoth toppled, his headless body crashing to the deck. On the view screens, the last Akamarian ships fled, vanishing into hyperspace jumps. It was over. Humanity had won. But as Kyle slumped against a bulkhead, gasping for breath, he saw the terrible cost of that victory. Earth's once proud defense fleet was reduced to a handful of battered ships, trailing smoke and bodies. The planet itself was shrouded in ash from the burning cities, its lush blue obscured by grey. Millions, maybe billions, were dead, human and alien alike. A hollow screen flared to life, projecting the haggard face of Earth's president. "Kyle, you did it. We've won. But the other races, they know our strength now. Some want to ally with us, others want what we have. It's a new galaxy out there." She sighed, looking decades older. "We need you, Kyle, not as a soldier, but as a leader, an ambassador for Earth. Your fight isn't finished. It's just beginning." The transmission winked out. Kyle looked down at his hands, coated in blood, both red and black. A diplomat, after all this. He thought of the soldiers he'd lost, the cities razed, the worlds forever changed by this war. Could he really hang up his rifle and shake hands with aliens over a negotiating table? He gazed out at the ruins of Zarkoth's flagship, the gutted behemoth that had once seemed so invincible. Everywhere he looked, he saw only death and loss. Maybe there had been enough of that for one lifetime. Wearily, he turned and began limping towards the shuttle bay, his wounds bleeding. Each step felt heavier than the last. The battle was over, but his mission had just begun. He had a feeling the wars to come would not be fought with rifles and starships, but with words and handshakes. He wasn't sure if he was ready for that, but for Earth, for humanity, he would have to be. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.